All right. Hi, everybody. We are going to be talking about printing and street photography. And I'm Ibarionex Perello, for those of you who don't know. This is Hugh Brownstone, and this is Ellen Friedlander, two very accomplished photographers. Uh, they are very adept in working on the street, and their work is very distinctive. But what we're going to talk about today is about the role of printing in our creative lives. And personally, I printed when I worked for magazines where I was doing reviews on printers. I would have the excuse to use any printer that was shipped to me at the time, and I would spend so many days or weeks with it, and then I'd have to write a review. But since I'd left the magazine world, I didn't really have access to a printer. And I just recently got I think it's a Epson Stylus Pro 4900, which is a big printer. And I just been like a kid in a candy store. And I not only realized how much I had missed printing, but experiencing my own photographs on that sheet of paper, especially some nice quality stock photo paper. Um, Holding that print, it was as good as when I first made a print in the old analog way. And you pull it, go through the developer, the fixture, the wash, and you pull it out and you go, I made this. And I think a lot of people who do street photography today kind of stop short of actually making the print. If they get it on the screen and they can put it on Instagram, that's the end of the process for them. And I just wanted to talk to two people who know the joy that is has to, the joy that's going to be had by making that print physical. And yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I just thought you two guys would be absolutely ideal to to uh, to discuss this. And I'll let each of you introduce yourselves, give us just a little background in terms of you and your work, and then we can just sort of jump in and just be spontaneous about the conversation we're going to have. I really have no agenda beyond trying to learn how each of us um, feels about the process of printing and what kind of role it plays in our work. So, Ellen, if you can start.
Okay. I have found photography when I was 16 and studied it through college and then worked with photographers my entire life, every opportunity I had. So they gave me a lot of depth, and all along the way, I photographed on the street at the same time and did portraiture and landscape and everything I could possibly do with a camera until I moved to LA in 2018 and truly found my voice and a community. So I'm very grateful to be here today. Um, Street photography is something that has always been part of my go-to. That's been how I solve my problems or I feel connected. That's kind of, and then finding other street photographers now and walking and feeling the passion and getting it. Um, that's been a joy. Onto you, Hugh.
Oh, thanks, Ellen, and thanks you, Ibarionex. This is great fun. I've been photographing for over half a century. I started, as most kids I knew did, around 10 years old at a local photo club after school. That the summer of my 10th year, I learned how to develop film and print. By the time I was 12, I had my own darkroom. My sisters would get really mad at me because it was our bathroom. So once I was in, they were out of luck. First job I ever had was working in a camera store at 14. At 16, I was running this 8-week summer program at the camp that I'd learned at. In college, I conspired to take one or two courses in photography, but by and large, when it comes to photography, I'm an autodidact. But life has a way of changing priorities, and eventually I lost touch with photography after taking photographs of my kids and all the rest, and I rediscovered it in 2017. And I have been hitting the street hard, New York City, and in particular, ever since I was born in New York City. I came to consciousness in New York City, came back as an adult to New York City, and I just love it. I think it's the greatest city on earth for the genre. And the reason why I do street photography with my wife, Claudia, is because every time we go out, every time we approach someone to say, would you mind? There is something about you. And someone says yes, because that's what we do 95% of the time. It reaffirms for me that the world is not a uniformly terrible place. The kind of street photography that we practice when we're not being surreptitious is what we like to think of as give and take. We're not just taking from them, because at the moment that we ask and the moment that they say yes, we are collaborating. We are establishing a moment of casual intimacy. We are co-creating, and we both end up feeling better. Of course, New York City has extraordinary textures and light and shadow. And from one week to the next, it changes, as every great city does. So it is endlessly fascinating. And we were talking just before you turned on the record button that a day or two ago, I do camera reviews, video reviews, Three Blind Men and an Elephant Productions, but on YouTube. But someone said, what's the point of having 60 megapixels in a Leica rangefinder camera? You know, there's no IBIS, there's no this, there's no that. Manual focus, all true, all true. And I have other cameras, but 60 megapixels, whether it's a Leica or a Sony or a Sigma, all of them are doing 60 megapixels these days, is that this is not just higher resolution than medium format from the film days. This, as a practical matter, is higher resolution than many large format cameras. And I have the 4x5 negatives to prove it. And what happens when you recognize that there's more to life and more to photography than Instagram is that when you move to a print, when you print large with resolution like this, if the image size and aspect ratio are in consonance with what these latest cameras are capable of, you are inviting people to linger over it. I mean, this is what Joel Meyerowitz did when he went to the Deerdorf. It's amazing that thing is so big that he did it. But me, I do it with my little Leica, and it blows my mind and makes me happy.
Yep. For me, the street photography is so connected to my self-worth, because when I was younger, I stuttered, I felt very inadequate. And when I made a print and I brought it down and I showed people, they responded in a way that they never responded to me before. So I loved the magic that street photography offered me, with that image appearing on that blank sheet of paper. But it was so self-affirming. And I think that still occurs now. I'm less reliant on other people's affirmation of me when it comes to my work, but I still get that thrill of going, I made this, right? I was walking around this random street. Everyone else is in their own world, and I see something and I can just draw something from the midst of all of that, pull it out, and it's a photograph. And that for me is a thrill that has never left me. I tell people I could be dumb, deaf, and blind, and you're still going to be pushing me around in a wheelchair as I take pictures, because that's not going to stop.
Absolutely. 100%. Yes. The other really wonderful aspect about printing is that I can't help it. I go back to my college days. My professors really, really instilled in me that I work a place. I work the angles, I work little bits. And so I may take 7, 10 different shots of the same type of area, but I get home and I put it in my Lightroom and I play with them. And then for me, I have a really hard time really focusing on which one is the absolute best. So I have to print, little test prints of like 8.5 by 11 photograph to like really, and put them up on the wall, and 3 different, and they can be a millimeter. It could be just a teeny weeny
Yeah.
aspect of the photograph that just is a little different, but seeing it printed and on the wall and coming back to it, then I can narrow, that's the one. But if I just do it in my Lightroom, I can't figure it out.
Well, you certainly have the right printer. I mean, I want to live next to you, because that is one big printer. But it's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things that I like so much about printing is that it's such a wonderful teacher. So you just gave a great example of that, Ellen. I like it because one of the things that it teaches is the relationship between the size and format of an image and the medium that best suits it. And what can look amazing on Instagram on an iPhone can look like crap on a large print, and vice versa, because we tune these images in Lightroom for the image size, the viewing distance, and the context, right?
Yeah, and the color, and just the change, just tweaking something a little bit makes a tremendous amount of difference. And so that tweak, I see that all the time on Instagram. I look at different photographers and their work, and I can tell when somebody's just taking kind of an average scene, but making it that much more powerful because of the way they've edited, right? And that's where the voice comes in. And that unique voice is incredibly important today when everybody can make a photograph. Yeah, so it's even more imperative.
Yeah, I think that the relationship that you have with your images is very different if you're only uploading them, to whatever internet service or group and making a print. Because for me, it's how should I say this? As you said, having other people linger at your work, that's what I want to feel when I'm looking at my photograph. And if I'm just looking at them on a screen, it's not intimate. But when I make the choice to say, I'm going to work on this image and I'm going to print it, there I have a more intimate relationship with my photographs than when I do when I'm posting for Instagram, right? I'm much more invested in the work because I'm going to be spending that much more time, tweaking the image so that it's conducive with the print and the paper type I'm using and the size and all of those things. And I think that that's lost for people whose hard stop is uploading it on Instagram or Flickr or whatever service they're using, because you can have all those tens of thousands of images on your hard drive, but it takes me saying this one image is worthy of my attention to see it through all the way to the sort of the finished print. And when I fall short of that, it seems incomplete.
It's interesting because you're talking about next level curation. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah.
Claudia and I use Instagram primarily as a curation tool for ourselves. It is a nice but unintended consequence that there is a community, and your peeps are always the first ones to like what you do, and you have a certain number of followers and that you follow, and you like to do the same thing. But I think also that what you're actually doing when you print is exactly what you said. You are investing more time and energy to figure out if that print or that image is actually worth investing the time to print, to test print, Ellen, to frame it, to pay for it. I mean, the marginal cost of a print that you put up on a wall is a little bit higher than the marginal view on your phone.
Yeah.
But I think also it elevates our day-to-day experience. So I have an 8x10 print on one of our walls, which was the first light show at the World Trade Center. I was walking along the Brooklyn Promenade in 2002, and I saw this thing. I had no idea what it was. I had a 4-megapixel camera, digital camera, took the shot, and now that I see that every day on my way to our bedroom. We have a 27 by 40 inch print of the New York City Tax March of April 2017. And it is there for everyone who comes into our home to see every day. And that is about how much room we have to improve who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Income inequality is as bad as it's ever been. The era of the robber barons may not have been as bad. And we do that for ourselves. So there are a number of ways that a print is a gift to ourselves. But it's also a gift to others if they want to participate. Ellen, you were saying that you've got a sale coming up for that purpose?
Yeah, and well, no, I actually have a client, a collector who is interested. I thought it was in one, and they're interested in 2 extended frame, and like you're large. And so that, and I know that these photographs can go large. So that's, a little bit of breathing, but I always stress over every time I print, because every time you print, it's like a baby, it's, I don't know, for me, it's this always new, but it takes me back to the first time that I took photographs in Orange County when I was starting to print here, to the printer, and it cost so much money. So I had to think so hard. It took me days to come up with the photographs that I wanted to print, because it was cash out of my pocket. And so when I went to having a printer in-house, the nominal amount of money that it cost me to print at home off of like a cheapy paper to get those test images, the difference in the stress level is like, there's no comparison.
Yeah.
Absolutely no comparison. I'd have just, $80, and I'd get, and then there's prints that weren't so good that I chose, right? So yeah, so the whole idea of being able to print my own work for a sale is absolutely beyond my comprehension. So, and like you, 2017 was my tipping point to come over to this side. It's like it was a magic year.
Mm.
Yeah. So we were talking about printers earlier, and I print up to 17 by 22 here in the house. We published our first street photography photographs in 2020, I think it was, and that was nice. We had a limited edition and sold out that first run. But when I want to go bigger than 17 by 20, I like working with an outside lab. And Ibarionex, to your point about the different textures and tonalities that are available in paper, that's really interesting, because when we look at something on even a 32-inch printer, 32-inch screen like what I use behind me, or on one of these smartphones, it's always like looking at a slide. It's always looking like a slide, which is what got me started in photography to begin with. I saw one slide, and I still have that slide. I saw it when I was 6 years old. And it was a piece of driftwood at water's edge, and it was Kodachrome, and I was hooked. But most of my printing is black and white. And it's fascinating. On the one hand, I like a matte finish, a heavy, 100% cotton rag, no optical brighteners kind of thing. And I like a matte finish because then there's no reflection. And it's really difficult to position a photograph where reflections don't become an issue. On the other hand, matte paper cannot give me the rich blacks, and it cannot give me the precision in the smallest details that a semi-gloss, like a Barita kind of paper can. So it's interesting. I took a shot of a guy in Washington Square Park. Asked him first, and I had a 20 by 30 matte print made. It worked for him, but it was not nearly the kind of black that I was used to. And yet, if I put the print 2 feet in front of me, he appears to me to be life size,
Hmm.
which is an amazing and slightly unnerving kind of thing, because he's looking right at me. On the other hand, for any of my urban landscape, I go to a semi-gloss, typically a burrito or a platine kind of finish, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that distinction.
Yeah, right now,
I agree. So Lance,
go ahead, Ellen.
sorry, I agree with you, Hugh, as far as the different types of work and the different types of paper. The museum etch I've used for like more of a lush landscape, and it has that texture, and I feel that lusciousness. It's almost, it reminds me, I want to say grain. It just has, you just feel velveteen and you want to be like sitting with it. And then for my extended frame, I'll use a platine paper so that it's all the details are kind of like there for the viewer to like sit with and be with. So yeah, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, I'm in the process of
When
trying to
you
figure
when you
out.
get
Go
ahead, Ibarionex.
Because I'm returning to it. I'm trying to find the papers that work for me, and it's really interesting because there's so many great papers that are out there. And right now, I worked on a project at the Huntington Library where I work as a photographer, and I did a project documenting how the Huntington dealt with COVID over the 2 years. And me and another photographer, we probably produced more than 10,000 photographs in those 2 years. And once I get this printer set up, we have an abundance of matte paper, and I just started spitting out prints of the ones that I really liked, and I don't even know how many prints I've made thus far. It doesn't even, and these were kind of my favorites from the project, and I probably have like at least 50 prints that I've made on them. But I was thinking about those prints more as a document of the work that I did, and not really a step up of looking at it as a piece of art, right? And
Although, Ibarionex, when you put all those photographs out, you're going to find one that blows you away just because it's in the physical print form.
oh yeah, I've experienced that because I was just
I
spitting out prints a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is good. Who shot this?"
exactly.
Hire that guy.
Right.
Yeah. But
But
I
you
think
could
it's
only see.
yeah, you
You
can
can
only
only
see it when
see
you make a print.
because, right. That's the only way. And you can only see it when you have all those other photographs that are more documentary type photographs. But because it's a screen and it's little and you can't really see all the depths of the photographs. But when you put them all together, that one or two or three photographs go, oh my God, I actually made a distinctive photograph that's resonating beyond all the other ones. And that's the only way you can do it, is by seeing it. It's amazing.
There's something that the two of you are saying that leads me to an important point for the reason I print. I used to have a 27-inch iMac. I've succumbed to the Mac Studio, and I therefore use a 32-inch monitor, which I had to calibrate because otherwise it gets to be a real pain. And maybe we talk about the exasperating qualities of printing, including calibration and soft proofing. But what's interesting is that, again, for the urban landscapes in particular that Claudia and I do, the beauty of a large print, and we have prints as large as 60 inches on the long side hanging in our home, is that you see simultaneously the detail, if you choose to move up closely and look at it, and the gestalt of the image when you move back. And that's something that you can't do even with a 32-inch printer. When I'm deciding what images are truly worthy of printing, I start with the gestalt. How do I react? What is my emotional response to the image? Does it make me think? Does it inspire me? Does it make me recall? But then I look at the technical details. And print monitors like these, it's easy to do that. But then you are pixel peeping, and you're only seeing this. You're not seeing the whole thing, and it's not as satisfying as when you're done to have the complete and finished work available to you at the scale you as an artist want other people to experience it.
Yeah, that white border around the image, that's when it becomes a photograph for me. Even the stuff that I upload to Instagram, I use a little app to create that white space outside of the print, outside of the image, so that it looks like it's a print. You know, it's amazing how that white border makes such a difference in how I experience a photograph, and I love it. And it's probably
I
tied
agree
to
with you.
my initial
I
discovery of photography. But Ellen, your work is really interesting because you make these sort of panoramic prints of multiple images that you've brought together, and those are always so fascinating. And talk to me about discovering how the print brought something out of it that otherwise wouldn't have existed.
Uh, the first extended frame photograph I made was Bird Market, and it stemmed from a photograph that I had shot in Hong Kong in 2014 and sat in my Lightroom forever. It was just the man and his bird. He was making a cage and the parrot sitting on the side. And I knew I had made a photograph, but I wasn't sure. And I was working with a photographer who was mentoring me at the time, Jim Friedman. And I had done this type of work, putting photographs together, and in college. I had done 4x5 work. I had done all sorts of putting things in kind of like a grid. And so all of a sudden I started going back to my younger self, and it was all play and experimentation. So I started putting several photographs together to create the one extended frame Bird Market. And they're just butted up next to each other. There's no Photoshop. I don't know how to use Photoshop. And so it's the idea that each photograph talks to each other and then creates a bigger whole and a conversation. And they're not even photographs from the same area and sometimes the same city or country. But when it's blown up, when I had my first solo show last year and I saw them on the wall and I watched people engage in them, that was the truly most amazing experience of my life. Because I watched photographers who had said, I've been a photographer for like my whole life, and I watched them look at the street in a different way. And so that to me was like the most humbling, and also I was so grateful because I had worked so long to find my voice on the street, and then seeing it on the wall for other people to see was just, the print is a magnificent experience, and it allows you to share it with a group of people, right? And a group of people can have a conversation. And so it has a life that's bigger than us, which is the idea, right? We want work to and also inspire other people to think about the street or what they can do differently. I guess that's
beautiful. Well said. Beautifully said.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I love the street. I was just in Venice on Sunday, and it was not my jam. I don't know. We all go out there. It's like, I don't feel it. I don't see anything. And I just let it go. And I actually made a few photographs because I just didn't think. I just let the light, I let the forms, I said, just meditate and don't get caught in my way. Don't overthink it. I think that's really important because we do know instinctively. We've been out there. We're practiced. I'm very disciplined when I'm out there, but there's this innate quality that, because I can't remember who said it, but you're supposed to go out there and let everything go, and whatever inspires you is what you make photographs of, and you think and you edit later. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what for me, the goal is to get into the zone, to get into that headspace where I'm not thinking about the next hour or the previous hour. Once I'm out there with the As soon as I'm out of the car, I'm making a picture, even if it's a bad picture, just because I just want to get
Mhm.
into that zone. For me, the measurement of a good day on the street is not how many good photographs I made, but was I in that space? And I know what it feels like, you know, and it's just
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, I'm here. And that for me is just so wonderful. It's just intoxicating. And that's part of what the allure is for me, is the ability to be able to pull out something poignant, beautiful, moving out of the randomness of the street, and to have the opportunity to be able to share it with a group. I mean, that's really at the heart of it, because if I relegate it to just the phone, it's just one person's experience as they look at it on Instagram amongst the other thousands of images that they're swiping by. But when you made it print, you're making a statement about the image, about yourself. I remember when I first saw the printed works of Ansel Adams, Roy de Carava, and W. Eugene Smith, I was gobsmacked, right? Because those three photographers printed in a very distinctive way. They would get criticized to hell and back if people put those pictures up saying it's too dark. Where are your highlights? And all that craziness. But these photographers, just to name a few, um, really were excellent examples of of photographers who understood not only their own vision but what they wanted to say. And I think that the role of printing, it really has to be tied into, well, what are you trying to say, and who are you trying to say it to? Otherwise, it can seem, just as a practical matter, an expected extension of the photography, because the inks, the papers, and all those other things. But I think you have to really have a clear understanding of why the print for you and your work.
This is a very interesting conversation, guys. Ansel Adams, in particular, of course, he did not photograph. No, he did not print necessarily what he physically saw. I think he
Mm-hmm.
printed how he felt.
Mhm.
I think this is so important because, Moonrise Hernandez, it didn't look like that. To your point, the sky wasn't
Yeah.
that dark. His photographs of the national parks are extraordinary because what he captured was the feeling of awe he had when looking at
Mm-hmm.
this kind of majesty. And I've been inspired by so many different photographers, but this notion of editing and printing in order to capture the feeling has absolutely informed my work. So that's one point I wanted to come back to. But then this notion of the process, Ibarionex, you just talked about going into the zone or the headspace. I can so relate to that because when I'm out on the street, I don't think about anything else. And for me, it's like skiing or body surfing. Everything is focused on being in the moment. I'm not talking about a decisive moment. I'm talking about being present.
Mhm.
And it is a reward in and of itself. It's my own kind of meditation. And when you have the opportunity to do that with someone else, where the two of you are out on the street together or you're in a group together, it's an amazing feeling. And then if you can translate any of that into a permanence which resides on a wall, wow.
The other thing, I did a whole bunch of work when I first moved to LA in Hollywood Boulevard, as in, Winogrand and Friedlander and Callahan. I mean, when I moved here, it was like one of my things. I had to walk the Hollywood stars. And I made a couple of photographs that I made big that captured a full-on scene. And when you actually print them large, they're like 30 by 40, there's little things that I happen. There are two photographs I'm really proud that I made. And there's like little teeny weeny like gestures. There's a hand coming out of a back, and there's a foot at the edge of the frame. And there's all these little bits that if it was just little, it's harder to engage with. You could, but with a 30 by 40 print of it, the viewer is like, oh, you know, all of a sudden sees all of the extra bits that you captured that we as photographers, even on the street, we don't see. It's kind of this magic that's given to us when it happens right. You know, there is a magic. You have to be there, you have to be ready, but all those little instantaneous things that happen that we then see in Lightroom or however we use, that's the surprise.
Yeah, I think that.
Are you guys?
Go ahead, Hugh.
You go ahead.
No, go
I
ahead,
was just
please.
going to, in response to what you just said, Ellen. Have either of you read Camera Lucida? Do either of you subscribe to this notion of studium and punctum? These little things. It really resonates with me with what you just said, Ellen, because when you're framing for Instagram, Claudia and I, remove everything from the photograph that does not reinforce the essence of the photograph. Because as something you said earlier, Ibarionex, when you were talking about Instagram, it's kind of like Tinder for photographs. You're just swiping through. It can be really terrible. But when when you have the luxury. Okay, I just started something, but I just want to finish it. This notion of having the time and space to view a large image and to discover whimsy in it is a beautiful thing. Okay, I'll be quiet now. I want to hear why you got so excited about that.
I just got funny. The first thing that popped into my head is Instagram, for those who can't make it on Tinder.
And, you know, so I think Instagram is a wonderful place to play. I was afraid of Instagram when I first started it. It was like, I found it really, the whole social media thing I found really overwhelming. And then I got past it and I was like, okay, I don't care. It's about playing and about talking and having, I can only post when I have actually something really to say. So when I feel dry inside or something's like there's just nothing going on, I can't post. I can't just post for the sake of it. I have to actually have an emotional feeling towards a photograph or for a reason to say, oh, I have something to put out there. Otherwise, I'm like, it just feels empty. That's how I approach it. Yeah, because otherwise it's a full-time job that I just don't have time for.
Yeah, when I look through Instagram, what I'm hunting for is something that surprises me, because it's such, it's so much uniformity on there, especially with when it comes to street photography, because I want something that is going to shake me up in terms of, oh, I never thought of seeing it that way. Because if I see other photographers photographing in cities that I've been in, and I go, oh, wow. And it's just not about the location or the quality of the light. It's the purposeful way that they exposed and composed the photograph that kind of thrills me. And those are kind of few and far between. But when I look at a print, I know that this person has made a commitment to this photograph, right? And is saying there is something important for you to see here and to experience here. And I appreciate that about the work. And it's and when I'm printing my own work, I think I'm still trying to figure out, well, what exactly am I trying to say? Because I've been going through my entire digital inventory to try and make a small portfolio of about 24 photographs, and trying to look at those things and okay, what's the connective tissue? Because I never went out with an agenda in terms of going to photograph this. It was just like reaction. But all of those things are informed by who I am, who I was, how I see the world, how I'm experiencing it. But there's still something that connects them all together. And I think that the curation of these images in the form of a print is has to be part of that. Because like you said, if I look on Lightroom and I look at I'm in the grid view, I'm looking at my image that I really like amidst all the images that didn't work. So it's like,
It's
no, I
so
have to make a
confusing.
choice to commit. Yeah, I have to commit to it and just say, okay, this is the one. Let me make a print. Because if I'm constantly seeing that image in a sea of things that fell short, um, I'm not looking at it in a way that I think is conducive to me finding whatever voice that I think I have.
And I'm not so sure that we can actually ever, I mean, we're vessels. I mean, I think that the other thing is that when you actually allow yourself to be the photographer that you are, your voice is coming through and it's always evolving. Okay, so it's constantly changing because we're constantly changing. And so when we're trying to actually say, who are we? I think that's for other people to say. And we just have to decide what photographs really resonate with us and we really love, and then put that out there and just like be unapologetic about it, because, and then allow other people to say, well, they get it, or they're going to feel it or not. But I'm not so sure that we can ever figure out exactly our voice, because it's always going to keep hopefully
Mm,
growing, getting better, changing. I want to make better photographs every time I can. So my voice is going to hopefully keep evolving. And then, but the work as a whole is still good. You know,
yeah.
it is what it is.
I think you make a wonderful couple of points. Joel Meyerowitz, who I've had the privilege to interview, has said any number of times that when he looks at a body of work with his students, and for him a body of work in that context is maybe a dozen images, he's looking to determine if he can find in those images the values of the photographer.
Mhm.
Mm,
And I think that's about the most economical way I've ever heard artistic voice defined at a practical level. I think you're absolutely right that we evolve. It's much easier to see in 7 to 10 year increments in my case, but it's true because we are always, every time we press the shutter, and then every time we look at our work, and then every time we make a decision about which work we want to do more with, it is a function of the sum total of our life's experiences up until the moment that we take those decisions. And so we are always growing richer for it. I know that in my street photography work, as I said earlier, I know why I do it. And it's sometimes only when you look back at your own work that your artistic voice, that is some kind of foundational level that lasts across a lifetime,
Mhm.
can become obvious.
Right.
And at the risk of being too simple, I think that certainly in Streets of New York, the book, the one thing that's crystal clear, not just to me, is that I love New York City. I love New York City. I love the people of the city. I love the freedom of the city. I don't like all of the smells of the city, but it's an extraordinary place, warts and all. I've traveled not everywhere in the world, but enough to know that New York really does it for me. The people do it for me. And for those people who haven't been in New York City, don't you guys find that the denizens of New York are a lot friendlier than one might have assumed, and often are much, much more willing to have their photographs taken? Um, yeah.
New York is magical, but I lived in Hong Kong for 15 years. And
Mm.
Hong Kong, when I've gone back, because I was I went to Hong Kong with children, babies and such. And so I had a camera always in hand, but always had a child too. And so and I was shooting film and never mind. And so as I've matured as a photographer and I've gone back several times since leaving, um, the the colors, the vibrancy, the phoneticness, that similar to New York, but the color of Hong Kong is just amazing, because I had the privilege of shooting last June in New York. I was there for 5 days, and I was like driven to the streets, and it was magical as always. But the Hong Kong experience, where it changes so fast. Like, I've gone back and I've shot the same particular scene over and over and over again, and it's like billboards are gone and buildings are gone, and it's the same exact spot, but everything is different. And so that's another thing that we do inadvertently, is that we're documenting change all the time. Every time we make a click, we're that scene, that space, that air quality, everything is never the same, which is also remarkable. I mean, I have buckets of photographs from the same exact spot, but there's only one that's good. Only one photograph was made, even though there may be like 300 of that scene. It's amazing.
You know, it's lovely. Berenice Abbott, for those listening who don't know, was an extraordinary photographer in her own right, led a very, very interesting life around the turn of the last century. And she was the one who did a book on New York City, and she captured it at a moment in time like Amber. But she, in turn, was inspired by and popularized posthumously the work of the French photographer Eugene Atget, who is the person in the photography world who inspired the first use of the term flaneur. He was a failed actor, he was a failed painter, but he enjoyed tremendous success being paid to catalog a disappearing Paris. And Ellen, you're exactly right. It's always different. It's always evolving. I go up onto the High Line every now and again, and every time I do, another view is blocked because something else is being built. Many years ago, I was in Long Island City when it was just leveled. There was nothing there except the Pepsi sign. So I photographed that sign from the back, looking east across the East River. And of course, now it's $4,000 to $12,000 a month high-rise apartments. And I say that actually without judgment or rancor, but just as an observation, a contrast that time gives us. So if you keep taking photographs of the same place over and over again, well, I'm sure there is a project there too, and not just one image that's great.
Well, I could talk to you guys forever, but we only have so much time. But why don't each of you just tell us where we can find you, see your work, and interact with you? Ellen?
I have a website, Ellen Friedlander Photography. You can find me there. Facebook, same thing. Instagram, EMF Photo 59. And you can text me, email me. I'll answer everything in Instagram or Facebook.
So you can find me on Instagram at Hugh Brownstone, HUGHBROWNSTONE, just like the buildings. And no, I have no relationship to that architecture other than the name. Same thing on Twitter. Our YouTube channel is Three Blind Men and an Elephant Productions. Our production company's website is 3bmep.com, where you can sign up for street photography workshops, one-on-one video mentoring, books, merch, and all the rest. And unfortunately, my photography site is pretty much like the cobbler's children with no shoes. So I need to redo that. But it is hughbrownstone.photography. Just be kind, because I haven't curated that and I haven't done anything with it. Now that this is out in public, I'm going to have to fix it.
And I'm Ibarionex of thecandidframe.com, and that's where you can go to see my work and also find out about the podcast that I host called The Candid Frame. And these two folks have been on my show. So if you're interested in hearing more from Ellen or Hugh, download those 2 episodes and you won't be disappointed. But Ellen, Hugh, thank you for your generosity and time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely fabulous. Lovely
Thank
meeting
you.
Okay.